Radio for the masses.
Headline edition, July 8, 1947. The Army Air Forces has announced that a flying disc has been found and is now in the possession of the Army.
If the game is rigged, change the game. Game changer.
I occasionally think how quickly our differences worldwide would vanish if we were facing an alien threat from outside this world.
This is Fade to Black with your host, Jimmy Church, on the Game Changer Radio Network.
All right. Good evening. How you doing? Kicking off another week here on Fade to Black. Today is Monday, October 6th, 2025. I'm your host, Jimmy Church. Let's do this, man. Yeah. Traditions. We have to keep traditions going around here. This week on Fade to Black, tonight, Dr. Diane Hennacy is with us. And the Telepathy Tapes tonight on Fade to Black. Tomorrow night, Tex Wesson is here, Dogman and Bigfoot. Wednesday night, well, it's my birthday. Yeah, well, my birthday is on Friday. But we're going to celebrate on Wednesday night. I've got a bunch of special guests that Michelle has booked in. As a matter of fact, one of my special guests for the first time ever on Fade to Black is my producer, Michelle. Yeah, Michelle's going to be with us. And I've known Michelle for a long time, 10 years, and never been on the show. So it took my birthday to get her on the show. So there you go. So that is Wednesday night. Thursday, we are off air. I am traveling to do some TV production that I do every single month. So we have a short week, but a great week. All right. Now, I want to remind everybody that I do have 7 events coming up in 2026. First up is the Conscious Life Expo, February 20th through the 23rd, 2026 at the LAX Hilton. This will be my 12th or 13th year hosting this event. Diane Hennacy is going to be there too, as well. The biggest conference in the world. All right. And so much fun. So we'll see everybody there in February. After that, it is the Sedona Ascension Retreat, March 20th through the 22nd in 2026 in Sedona, Arizona. After that, it is the Contact Modalities Expo, May 1st through the 3rd, 2026 in Delavan, Wisconsin. I'll be hosting that too as well. And I'm going to speak at that event too, at the Delavan Lake Resort. After that, I come back for Contact in the Desert, May 28th through June 1st, 2026. Tickets on sale next month on Thanksgiving Day. Then I head south to Peru for the Inca Celebration of the Sun, the winter solstice. That is June 23rd through July 1st with Brian Forrester. I come back from that, change the underwear out of my suitcase and turn around and head over to the UK for the Monty Python Tour of Scotland. And that is August 1st through the 9th. Hosting something like that is an honor and a privilege, and it is bucket list stuff going down. And then I go back to Peru and Easter Island in November of 2026 with Brian Forrester. The links for everything that I am doing are below. Now, before I bring Diane in, huge announcement earlier today. Started with text coming in on my phone, and then I started to see the breaking news. Rush. That's right, Rush. Geddy Lee and Alex Lifeson are coming out of retirement. They're going to do a reunion tour next year. And it's like, wait a minute. Well, who's playing drums? Jeff Beck's old drummer, Annika Niles. That's right. And I saw a post today. There's going to be at least one woman at the Rush show. And I was like, wow, she's amazing. And Geddy Lee announced today, he said, man, it's a nearly impossible role to fill, that of Neil Peart. And he's right. And the whole world is watching that announcement, but it's Annika. It's going to be amazing. Huge news today. You know, if you're in the music world, that is ginormous news, especially if you're a Rush fan like I am. All right. So I thought I'd get that out of the way. I'm excited. All right. Man, I have so much going on in 2026. I hope I can see Rush tonight. Diana, it's my daughter's name. It just came out that way. Diane Hennacy is with us. We're going to be talking about not only her groundbreaking work, but we're going to talk about telepathy and the telepathy tapes tonight. We're going to do a complete deep dive on every angle of this. I've talked about it many times on the show. I have listened to the complete series of the telepathy tapes now probably 6 times, maybe 7. She's a neuropsychiatrist. She's a neuroscientist and a former Harvard faculty member with a private practice in Oregon right now, a Johns Hopkins-trained clinician and award-winning author. She has worked internationally, including with Sir Michael Rutter, studying autism in 1987. She's an expert in PTSD and co-created programs for survivors of torture international and the McCandless Women's Center. All of that and much more. We've got a lot to talk about tonight. Her links are below, and I would like to welcome back to Fade to Black, the one and only Dr. Diane Hennacy. She's right there. Diane, what's going on?
Yeah, so much. I don't even know where to begin. But you and I are going to be at a lot of things together.
I know, right?
Yeah. Our paths are going to be crossing, like, back and forth.
Well, you know, I love, and we've done stuff together, so you know how I am when I'm at these events. I love it. I love it. I love getting everybody, woohoo, right?
Yeah,
I like,
woo-hoo.
I like that part of it. But here's the other thing, and you're a part of it. The speakers and the presenters, we're all family. We do this a lot together, and so it's an opportunity for all of us just to go and hang out and see each other and do things. And it's just, it's like vacation for me. It's work, and it's a lot of work, but it's so much fun. And you were right there with me. We had a blast, didn't we?
Oh, we did. Yeah.
We had a blast. I thought to myself, and I'm going to throw you under the bus right now. I'm such a fanboy of yours, but I have to be objective, right? I can't let that show, but I let my emotions get away from me with you at that event, and I'm just so proud of the work that you've done and everything else. Now, can I? You dropped Powell. You've dropped Powell, and is there a story behind that?
Oh yeah, absolutely.
Can you talk about it?
Oh, of course. Yeah.
Okay, what happened? What's going on?
Well, okay. So first of all, I've been divorced for well over 20 years, and Powell is my married name. But I became famous within, what I was doing then under the name of Diane Hennacy Powell.
Mm-hmm.
My patients all knew me under that name. And, my daughter was still young and traveling, when you're divorced. It's easier if you just have the same last name. You don't go through the same kind of scrutiny, taking a minor across, the borders, and I was taking her to different countries and whatnot. So I kept the name Powell. But the deeper that I dove into understanding consciousness, and a lot of that has been working with indigenous people that really see the names as significant. In fact, they will let a child go a year without a name because it's so important that you have the right name, because every time you say that name, you're evoking whatever the meaning is of that name and the frequency associated with that. And so the deeper I went into understanding consciousness, the more I was like, I started looking up what's the meaning of names. Okay. And so my first name, is easy, Diane, Diana, goddess of the moon, goddess of the hunt, describes me perfectly. The moon is associated with the mind and emotions. And it's reflective, right? It's reflective of sunlight. Right. It's the bright light, the most dominant light of the night. And the night is the time when we do our deepest journeys into the unconscious. And so for my mother, to say, first name Diana, it's like, yeah, okay, makes sense. My middle name when I was born was Marie. And Marie, of course, is, Mother Mary. It's also Mary Magdalene. It's basically the divine feminine in the Christian tradition. And then my last name when I was born was Hennacy. And when I looked up what does that mean, Hennacy means descendant of Angus, and Angus was the Celtic god of love and poetry.
Isn't Hennessy also a Scotch?
But no, it's an Irish name. It's one of the oldest, if not the oldest, Irish name there is. I am Scott Irish. Okay.
but Diane Marie Hennacy, what a beautiful name.
It's a beautiful name. And
wow.
but growing up in the Midwest, when I got married, and I got married at a very young age, it was like I adopted my husband's name. And I took on Powell, and so I kept Hennacy, but dropped the Marie. And when I became more aware of consciousness and names and how important they are, and how when people speak your name, they're evoking that consciousness. When I was like, well, okay, so this is what Hennacy means, and this is what Marie means, and Diane, what does Powell mean? And when I looked it up, I saw that it meant it meant servant of St. Paul.
Oh, is that right?
And I'm like, how the hell did I exchange my last name as being a descendant of a god of love for a servant of St. Paul? and get rid of Marie.
Right.
The divine feminine. And I was just like, no, I was born with a name in which all three names had a divinity that I was in resonance with. And I was just like, I don't care.
Do you feel different? Do you feel different now that you've changed your shirt?
This has been a process of me trying to drop the last name Powell, because people still insist on calling me Powell. Because that was what my book was published under. That's, and I'm really, really trying to change that. That's why, my institute that I just created, the Hennacy Institute, is, it's another attempt to drop the name Powell. I want to be called Diane Hennacy. And so I realize it's a cognitive dissonance for people, but it's an important cognitive dissonance for people to make, because what I think is going on right now is that I think that we are seeing the emergence of the divine feminine, and men are not excluded from the divine feminine. Okay. How I define the divine feminine is that which is life supporting. And I see that the answer to the patriarchal systems that we all know have been toxic for humanity is the divine feminine. And so by my switching my name, I'm making a statement that, yes, time to enter into the age of recognizing how important that is. I mean, when you look at people like
it's a powerful statement. It's
a very powerful statement, and I'm doing it at the expense of a lot of confusion, and maybe I don't sell as many books or whatever. It's made my life far more complicated, but I'm doing it because it's a statement about how important it is that we pay attention to language, and how important it is that we pay attention to our ancestry, and how important it is that we pay attention to, are we supporting that which is life affirming,
right,
versus that which is that, I define the patriarchy as, it's not about the, political parties or this or that. It's about, are you about controlling? Are you about dominance over nature? Are you about, force, exerting force rather than, a
Well,
model?
it's about the universe runs that way. The
It
universe
does.
runs balanced. It
I,
runs balanced.
and so what I think is happening is that we're seeing a restoration of balance. We're coming to the end of an age at which this patriarchal system has had us out of balance. And it has been very, oriented towards left hemisphere things, analytical, logical, separation, scientific objectivism, materialistic reductionism, and this and that. Oh, what is that?
Oh man.
I'm
Okay, I just peed on myself a little bit. That was loud. While you're fixing that, let me make this. I just want to say this real quick, addressing what you're saying. I was hearing from everybody. Jimmy, have you checked out the telepathy tapes? Have you checked out the telepathy tapes? Have you started reading about it? And it was just coming at me from all directions, and from a lot of people that I respect, but also fans. And I'm watching it on the podcast listing. Wow, okay, the telepathy tapes sounds interesting. I'm gonna check it out. I really didn't know. And so I put it on. I'm in bed listening to it in the dark, like a lot of us listen to podcasts. And I'm starting episode 1, and I'm getting settled in, pull up my blankie, and then I hear these words. And joining us is Dr. Diane Hennacy Powell from her home in what? And my eyes popped open. Like, I know her. What? And so that got my attention, right? Okay. Well, my attention was already there, but now it allowed me to focus, right? It caught my attention, and I busted through all of that, and all I could think of over that week, and we'll address, the tapes as we move along tonight, was, what is that like? What is that like to go from one situation to the biggest podcast in the world? I've got to ask her, right? So I asked you about this privately a couple of months ago, but now I'm going to ask you very publicly. You've been researching this subject for a very long time. Were you surprised at the attention that it got from the rest of the world? Just like you're pointing out, where the world is starting to change. Were you surprised by the attention from the planet on this podcast?
I was, only because of the fact that it took so damn long. When I first started doing this, I thought, wow, this is amazing, and I'm going and presenting it at scientific conferences, and I'm seeing people's jaws drop, and nothing was happening, and nothing was, except for the medical board taking my license away, and then me getting it back, but nothing positive was happening. And I was just like, so I was more surprised back then at why is it that people don't get it, and then the surprise was that now finally people get it. So there's been a huge shift in receptivity to this. And I would have loved for it to have happened earlier. Yet, I'm grateful that it's happened now. Better late than never. But But I was more surprised that it wasn't happening back then, given who I am, what my, my credentials are, the controls that I had done experiments under, the way that, I was surprised that it didn't get the reaction back then. But you know what? I think it has to do with the fact that everything happens in divine timing.
For sure. It's all the journey.
And so it wasn't meant to happen back then. It was meant to happen now. And as the result of it happening now, I feel that, gosh, I'm at an age where, I would be retired normally now. And I'm busier than ever.
Yeah, for sure. I was, I don't know if it was around episode 3 or 4. And I'm listening in the dark, and I got up, I turned on the light, and I stood up. I'm going to use a bad word, but I'm going to say what I said to myself out loud. I live alone. And I stood up and I went, this shit is real. Right. And so I got up and I paced around. This is a 4 a.m. kind of thing. And my brother has, him and his wife have an autistic nonverbal son. And he's probably around 3 years old now, and cute kid. And I thought, I need to call my brother. I need them to listen to this. I didn't, and I didn't want to ask them about telepathy or anything. I didn't want to preload it, right? I didn't want to go there. But, and then the next day in my excitement, I rethought it. And this is my question. I decided not to call my brother. And the reason is they are going through what they're going through, the school system, getting them, and doctors and things and groups and support and, everything that they're going through. And it's a lot of work, for it's not work. It's a, you know what I mean? Life is a bunch of challenges for them. And I thought, what if I got false hopes up? And it didn't work out that way. I decided to back off. Is telepathy like this with parents and children very common? And is it more common with autistic children? And should I have called my brother and given him the heads up?
Well, those are several different questions.
but very important stuff. All of this was going through my head.
It's all important. It's all important. Okay. So let me say that, first of all, telepathy is real. I'm not sure. I have different, until I can complete my research, I can't say whether or not all of the kids who are non-speakers are telepathic, but I have a suspicion that we may all be telepathic when we're born, and that what happens is that we get indoctrinated against that. And that when we acquire language, that the telepathy goes underground. That's a really strong suspicion that I have. And so a lot of these kids, they lose their language early on, and right when they're acquiring it, and they just retain the telepathy. Okay, and I think that telepathy may even help us to acquire language in the first place, because we're tuning into what our parents or whoever's around us is thinking and saying at the same time. And we're associating those sounds, those patterns, with the meaning that they have as more the proto language. Think of it as like there's a language that predates language, that is really what's behind language that we use to express it.
Here's I'm not sure if it goes away though,
Well,
and
it may not. It may not go away. It may
right.
not go away. And so, it depends upon the degree to which you're conditioned to. You're trying to fit in. You know, if you're trying to fit in, that you're conditioned into believing that it's not possible, or you see that it doesn't get reinforced, and language gets reinforced. You know, whatever it. You know, it goes underground. Okay. But in a lot of individuals, you know, increasingly it's not going underground. It's still there. It's just not spoken about. So that's one aspect of things. Another thing is that a lot of these individuals who regress and lose their language, they're not only telepathic, they're highly intelligent.
Mm-hmm.
And I think that they could retain those gifts and also regain speech. And so what I'm doing is I'm not just interested in telepathy and these other gifts that these individuals have. I'm also interested in how can we help them to fulfill their highest potential.
I was with Dahlia and Lidu last weekend.
Yeah.
And I'm with a group of people, and Dahlia and Lidu come walking up. Hey, you know, and so I introduce her to everybody, the both of them. And I turned to Lidu and I said, and this is where not only do I agree with you, but they adapt into another way of communication. There's a lot going on up there, but they have a lot to say, right? And so I said to Lidu, I go, do you remember me? She goes, yep. That verbally, she said, yep. I said, okay. Remember my name? And she grabbed the card, right? And tapped on Jay, and everybody that was standing there went, right? And she tapped out Jimmy. Now she's got a lot to say, but the only way that she can get it out is by tapping it. And she did it like this though, right? It wasn't, I didn't have to say, okay, it starts. No. And the lights are on, you know what I mean? It's absolutely incredible to see that.
Absolutely. I mean, this is not a statement about, their intelligence. Okay. But what's missing is a cable between their ability to take what they're thinking and have it connect with their mouth and their ability to speak it. Okay. And so
I'm not going to make light of it. I'm not going to make light of it, but I personally have that challenge every night on the show.
Yeah, I mean, and so it's sort of like, it's like you're missing that cable, but they can do it through pointing on a letterboard. Okay. Mm-hmm. And what I'm doing with these individuals in my work with them is trying to help them to be able to express it, build that cable. Okay. And with Lidu, she has more speech now than she did when I first met her. But it really is about, that wiring in the brain that is connecting the thinking, the thought, with the expression of the thought. And so sometimes they can express it better through typing. And this is one of the things that we know about autism. I mean, this was one of my first insights into this was when I heard an interview with Donna Williamson, who wrote the book, Nobody Nowhere. And she was the first autistic individual who was able to express what her inner world was like. And it was because she was more functional than a lot of individuals. And when we first got laptops, she was able to, she had her own computer and she could type out what she was thinking, but she could never say it. And she typed it all out and sent it to somebody and said, tell me what's wrong with me. And the psychiatrist said, oh, you're autistic. And then she was in an interview with somebody in NPR, and they would ask her questions, and she could not answer the question directly. She would type the answer and then read the answer. So she is like that she could do my thoughts to typing to I can read what I typed to now I can speak it, because I can speak what I read. I can type what I think, but what I can't do is speak what I think.
Right.
It's like, you know, and if you just think of it in terms of, well, that's a connection there that most of us take for granted. But as a neuropsychiatrist and understanding how the brain is wired, I'm like, yeah, that makes sense. I mean, there's all kinds of quirky connections like that where and you find workarounds. Okay.
Yeah, the motor connections aren't there, but that doesn't mean that the brain isn't learning and evolving and maturing. Have you seen the movie? I don't want to get sideways into this. Have you seen the documentary King Gimp?
King Jim? No.
King Gimp.
No.
Okay, it won an Academy Award. You can write it down, King Gimp. Especially for your work, you would really enjoy this film. Came out in like 1998. And Daniel, the subject of the film, who I eventually became friends with, but as a documentary film crew, I'm going to make this very brief. I want you to watch the film and then shoot me an email after you watch it. A documentary film crew shooting this documentary at this preschool. He is wrapped. He's paralyzed, neck down, right, and can't talk. So they have him swaddled up, right, in a blanket on the ground, and he would roll around. He was like 3 years old, 4 years, but he would roll around. He couldn't walk, but he could roll, right? And so the documentary film crew picks up on this. The documentary film crew, he's 3 years old. The documentary film crew follows him all the way through the graduation of college. Okay, documents his whole life from that moment. What they found was he was a genius. And there was an accident that happened. The teachers were doing some math, you know, with some other students on a blackboard. And he's like, writes it out. I got this. What? You know what's going on? He goes, man, he says to them, he writes it out, taps it, right? I understand everything. Right. And so that's the focus of the documentary went from these other, you know, to him. Watch that documentary. He's one of the most amazing fine artists and painters in the world now. And he paints. He's got a little head thing that he has with a brush. He's paralyzed, but he can dip the brush into paint and then paint. His work, he's incredible. Daniel Keplinger is his name. And look him up. He's absolutely incredible. Goes back to your point, right? We cannot dismiss because there's motor issues that this isn't here. The same emotions, the same wants for love and acceptance and communication and friends and family. It's all the same as you and I, you know, and that's the thing where I get choked up. You said earlier to me, well, yeah, but Jimmy, you've got a rough side to you, right? You know, I do. I ride a Harley. But man, my heart is big. And I see stuff like that. And Lidu, oh my God. You know, what a special, special, special person. And I'm just glad that the world is now starting to pay attention to this. It's not just you and I. The telepathy tapes really elevated the awareness of this.
Yeah, you know, and I must say that, I mean, some of the biggest hearted people I've known, people that ride Harleys, you know. So, I mean, you know, maybe there's some kind of correlation there, you know, that, you know, that which attracts you to that, you know. When people get to know me, they realize that I am so non-judgmental. You know, I just care about people. And I and I really am very heart-centered, even though I've got a brain, and people know me for, my intellectual, accomplishments and whatnot. But, it's when you combine that with your heart,
Right.
that you really are able to tap into truth. It's not just a concept. It has more impact on people as well.
We have to get there if we're going to ever mature as a species, as Earthlings. I think that we're still teenagers. We're like 20 years old. We're at that age where we're not quite adults and have accepted responsibility yet. We're still getting our yayas out as a race, but we're almost there where it's time to get serious about this planet.
We're almost at the midlife crisis.
Yeah.
That's how I put it.
Woo! I know, right? What is telepathy? And I think it's a misused word. People want to understand and speak about telepathy, but what is telepathy? What's your definition?
Well, I mean, telepathy, it's really just mind-to-mind communication. How is it that, I can just send whatever it is I'm thinking or feeling from my mind to another individual without having used some kind of communication.
Is there a language barrier? What if somebody doesn't speak English and they only speak?
There's no language barrier. That's the thing. That true telepathy is independent of language. I mean, these children that I've been researching, I mean, what's remarkable about them is that they can be with somebody whose language is not their own language, and they can still get the message.
As a neuroscientist, how do you think that works?
Oh, I think that there's a proto language. I think that there's, and by proto I mean, prior to language, there's something deeper than that as a construct that is what the language is trying to express. Think about how inefficient language is to express certain concepts. How often do you have a concept that you're like, I can't think of the words, but this is the thing, right? You can't think of the words. What if you can transmit that and it's not language dependent, right? You're just transmitting that. And I think that that's actually what preceded language. And what's happened is that because we have adopted language as the form of communication, it's almost like adopting tunnel vision, where you're.
No, that makes sense, though. That makes sense. Before language, if we back this up 100,000 years, right? Before language, you had to communicate existence for the day. Yeah. Time to get up, time to hunt. I'm hungry. I'm sad. I'm happy.
Our ancestors were communicating all the time.
Exactly.
Animals communicate. And it's not because they studied language in school. And so there's a proto-language that what happens is that exists, but we don't even pay attention to it because we've been conditioned into believing that unless it is language as described, your ABCs and your, and then forming it into words and reading words and enunciating those words and this and that, that you're not communicating. And
I get it. Trust me, I get it.
And there's no evidence that that's the only form of communication occurring. Think of all of the animal species that communicate with one another. They don't have that. But also just think of the communication that occurs, for for go back 100 years. You know, you really think they weren't communicating with one another?
No, they had to have been. I was driving down the road a couple of months ago here in town, driving, and I see this up in front of me. It's middle afternoon, daylight. I see in front of me what looks like a black moon. Like the moon is there, but it's black. I thought, wow, look at that. Okay. And that's interesting. What is that? I wasn't thinking UFO or anything, but it just was strange. I thought maybe balloon. Okay. But it was black and it was right above the road, right in front of me. So I'm driving towards it, and then it burst. It was a flock of birds. And I watched him do all these crazy things in front. Now, we've all seen videos of this, right? It's fast. But I'm watching it myself. And all I could think about was, how are they doing that? How is that happening? Where this geometric, right, coordination of shapes is happening, and they're not using hand signals. They're not yelling at each other. They don't have a playbook, right? How is that happening? Well, that is exactly what you're talking about. That is another form of communication that is truly nonverbal.
Yeah, exactly. Exactly. And so these children who verbal communication was disrupted in the very beginning of its development, they just stay in that proto language communication style.
Did you have telepathy with your daughter? I do. I'm going to tell you right now, my daughter and I do weird stuff all the time. I love it.
Well, I've had it with more than just my daughter, you know, but I mean, I've never done the kind of things that I do with these children, you know, that I'm testing their abilities. You know, I've never done the, you know, random 6-digit number, you know, and you know, kind of thing. But I mean, when my daughter needed me as an infant, I knew it before. I mean, I knew it. I knew it. I would go into her bedroom and I'd be there before she even let out a cry. I'd wake up from my sleep and I'd just be there. Or, you know, there are many times, not only with my daughter, but with animals of mine that, you know, I had the privilege to have in my household that, you know, adopted me as their mom, you know. You know, that I always,
but I think all parents, they can deny this if they want. That's fine. But, you know, I knew when my daughter was in her bedroom drawing on the wall with crayons.
Yeah, but you know, you know it because you cared.
Yeah, I would.
You know, and maybe the level of caring was like, that kid better not be drawn on my wall. You know, whatever the caring was.
Right.
You know, it mattered to you. You have your little radar out. You know, for you know, I don't quite trust this kid. You know, she had a little twinkle in her eye. You know, she grabbed that pen, you know, she just looked a little too excited. You know, whatever it is, there's a radar where you're picking up what they are thinking, you know, and I've had this with my daughter. I've had it with, you know, my dogs, my cats. I've had it with my patients, whatever, where I know what they're thinking, you know, and it's not necessarily like word for word, but the essence of it is totally there. And I don't think there's anything woo-woo about that. I don't think it's paranormal. I think it's the natural state of being in connection. I think that we are interconnected with one another. And a lot of that interconnection is because we feel bonded. And, you know, and whether or not it's that we feel bonded because we're part of the same flock, you know, like the birds that are flying together, and the school of fish that, are together, or the family members that are together, especially in ancestral tribal times, but it's like, how I feel about my daughter, how I feel, my animals are part of my, they're part of my tribe, and so I think that there's something about that social, and this is not just a new idea with me. I mean, this is something that other parapsychologists have seen, is that social bonds seem to be conducive to this kind of knowing what the other is experiencing or thinking or feeling.
Well, professional medical circles, academia, they are all experiencing themselves what you and I are talking about. They know that, they know the bond that they have with their kids and their pets. They don't want to discuss consciousness, and they certainly want to push back in this world of telepathy and parapsychology. Why is that? Why do they push back when they're experiencing it all themselves in their own lives?
Well, I think a lot of it is because the model in which they're trained to think about consciousness, or the brain, and how it all works, is that, well, it's impossible, and so they don't have a framework for it. And that's one of the, so besides doing the work that I was doing with these autistic individuals, looking for really compelling evidence, I've also been working on a theory for understanding, how these things are possible. And that's what my next book's going to be about. My next book, Wired for the Impossible, is going to be actually putting in scientific terms what I think is happening, why I think this is possible. And it really is science-based, it's not, and people who've attended, some of my talks and whatnot, they see it and they go, wow, you're right, this stuff is possible. And that changes everything, because people need to have a framework. People have cognitive dissonance if something just doesn't fit in with their version of reality in terms of how they conceive of it, but once you say, well, did you ever consider this, and you reframe it, they can go, oh, okay, now it makes sense. And then all of a sudden, all those things that they were excluding because it didn't make sense become possible, and you're expanding their reality.
Well, I'm not putting words or thoughts into every single academic or scientist or researcher, but in a general sense, I'm not wrong. They are only comfortable in what they can measure, observe, quantify, and repeat. And unless it goes to that level, they don't have time for it. Right? But how do you set up those kinds of protocols acceptable to them?
That's the thing that's so beautiful about the theory that I've been working on, is that it's scientifically and mathematically based. And the autistics that I do research with can reliably reproduce the evidence. So it's like, you've got the reliably, reproduce evidence at an extraordinary to an extraordinary degree that most people who are highly intuitive and psychic could never do. That combined with a theory that it helps to explain it, that's got mathematics behind it, that is in total. That's totally compatible with neuroscience, cutting edge neuroscience and physics. And that's what I've been working on. And I feel that I have found like these different threads, and I'm just weaving them together, and it changes everything, because it makes it permissible once you realize that, it's not just that I've observed it, it's that That fits with science. It's not impossible. That was the whole purpose of my first book, the ESP Enigma, was to say physics from 100 years ago, more than 100 years ago now, says this stuff is possible. It says that how we think reality is, how we perceive reality is an illusion compared to what it actually is. And then I was talking about how, so if physics doesn't say it's impossible, in fact says it's highly likely, because how we perceive time is an illusion, and how we even perceive space or matter, all of that's an illusion. And then you look at and that you have things like chaos theory, and that shows you that just a little change over here is going to impact all these things. That shows you everything's interconnected. If just a small little change here is going to affect everything else, far away. And, in string theory with all the extra dimensions. And then if you really understand what dimensions means, then that means that, wow, you're only seeing a small slice of reality, and then you look at, how narrow our range of perception of, whether it's vibration, which is sound, or electromagnetism, which is light, we're only perceiving a small small segment of the whole thing that's out there. And we know that we're living in a sea of waveforms that can contain information. And so you take all of that, and then you look at neuroscience, and then you're just like, oh, neuroscience, it's an incomplete model. It can't explain consciousness.
You can't. As a matter of fact, that form of physics, especially the quantum and the theoretical stuff, is more woo and crazier than anything that we talk about on this show, right? And it's truly, honestly, it is truly a belief system, more so than religion. You can't. The common nobody's seen anything at the quantum level, but we have to trust and believe what science is telling us that these equations on the whiteboard are saying this. Well, you know what? You're asking for my belief and trust in what you're saying, because this doesn't make any sense to me. And that is a belief system.
Yeah, it's entirely a belief system. And so once you start to realize that, and it's a belief system to say that the brain creates consciousness.
100%.
That's a huge assumption. And we can't explain how it would create consciousness, but we know it does, and so it's just like there's so much of this that's like based on beliefs, and so what I'm doing is I'm saying, let's get down to, what do you experience? What do you know from your firsthand experience? And the reality is that science can explain those experiences. We don't need to discount them, and we need to view them as that which should be informing science, rather than science dismissing them and giving you theories that just don't fit anything that you can relate to. I mean, it's like so backwards.
Mm-hmm. Sean Carroll, one of the great physicists, one of the great minds. I like Sean most of the time. He said last year, he does a once a month thing, Ask Sean Anything, right? Ask Me Anything. And pretty much any physicist out there is, if you're up against something like that, somebody's going to ask the question, okay, so what's consciousness? It's going to happen. It happens every time, right? Okay. And they squirm. This is what Sean Carroll's answer was to that. All right. I'm going to paraphrase, but this is what he said. Just like that. I'm not going to waste my time on something I can't see. That's his answer. That's his answer. And the other problem that I have with that you just touched upon, and then we'll roll into a break. I'd love to hear your answer on this, if chemists and biologists and scientists are so comfortable in saying that the brain creates consciousness, that consciousness is from the physical and it's a chemical reaction, why can't you measure that? If that's the case, right, that you have everything there in place to set up some lab experiments. If you believe in what you're saying, that's the problem. It's like a paradox. And I don't think that they really hear themselves. They're just too uncomfortable with something that they clearly don't understand.
Yeah. Yeah. No, absolutely. Absolutely. I mean, what's happened is that so many people, they don't realize, they're just parroting what they've been told.
Dogma.
Yeah, I mean, to some extent, it's dogma, but to some extent, it's just sort of like it's just they're not thinking. They're just saying because
well, you went through the same academic processes as everybody else. At what point did you decide to break with the system?
Oh, pretty early on. I mean, I don't know. There's something different about me. I think that's one of the reasons why I started studying consciousness in the first place. Is I'm just like, something different about me, and I want to figure out what's different, because I just saw that how other people were and how I am is not the same, because I just don't fall into pre-programmed sets. I'm much more independent than that in my thinking process, and so there's definitely something different about me.
Did you say pre-programmed sex?
Yeah, pre-programmed sets.
Oh, sets. Oh,
SETS.
I thought you said SEX.
No,
which is the same thing, actually. If you think about it. Well, where does consciousness reside then?
Well, I don't think consciousness has. I think that's the wrong question. Okay, because I don't think consciousness has a place. I mean, that's thinking from this sort of like, three-dimensional way, of reality, where it's like consciousness has to reside somewhere. Like where does the cloud reside? The cloud, the computing cloud that we're using, for all of our computing now, where does that reside?
I have no idea. Everywhere.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And so where does God reside? If there's a God, it's like it's everywhere, and it's everywhere all at once, right? And so it's like you get into non-locality. Once you get into non-locality, it's telling you that it's wrong to even ask, where is it? And that's what's so profound about these abilities that some of these autistics are showing us, is that they're suggesting consciousness doesn't have a locality, that's the wrong question to ask. And it's hard for a lot of people to wrap their heads around that.
The ignorance that we have when it comes to anybody that we don't look at as equals, which pisses me off, right? And so you and I, if we were around, this is the ignorance, not you and I, but let's say a couple of people are around somebody that is autistic, right? Nonverbal. And you want to comment and say some kind of bullshit statement like, they'll never get relativity, right? And they take out that letter board, E equals MC squared. space and time are the same. You know what I mean? I understand relativity. Don't, that's, it just makes me angry.
They may understand it better than most of us.
That's my point, right? That's exactly my point. Let's take our break right here. Diane, you stay right there. Fascinating conversation tonight. We're going to do all of it. We are going in, around, and above and below and inside the telepathy tapes and all of her research. Diane, stay right there. We will be back right after this short break. This is Fade to Black. Stay with us. Subscribe to our YouTube channel to get your alerts and access to over 2,000 videos. Click that subscribe button right now. Go to jimmychurchradio.com and get the Fade to Black official podcast. 2,000 episodes, all of them commercial free for just $2 a month. Watch Into the Vortex on Gaia TV. It's Fade to Black for the screen. Simple to do. Go to Gaia.com, search Jimmy Church, or click on the link below. Follow Fade to Black on Twitter at JChurchRadio. Get all of the show updates every single day. It's now called X, but who cares? How you doing? Jimmy Church here. Special announcement. Get your Fade to Black t-shirts. That's right. Help support the show. Help support everything that we do over here. We've got 2 t-shirts. We've got 2 ways to get them. Get your Fade to Black t-shirt today. Go Backley Tappy. Go to jimmychurchradio.com and become a Fadernaut. Get a membership. That's right. Everything is commercial free. You have access to downloads, and you get to call yourself a Fadernaut. Jimmy Church, Gaia TV, Fade to Black, here at Machu Picchu with Brian Forster and Hidden Inca Tours. Amazing tour so far, Brian, but we're here to announce what we're going to do next year in 2026. What's going on?
Okay, November 2026, we're going to have our major tour of Peru and Bolivia, either a pre or post tour of Paracas and Nazca on the coast. And then after that, 6 days in Easter Island.
Bucket list, Easter Island. Come join Brian and I and his amazing team here at Hidden Inca Tours for Peru, Bolivia, and Easter Island. Signing out. Say goodbye, Brian.
Bye, gang.
River Moon Coffee, makers of the Fade to Black blend. Truly the best coffee on planet Earth. Just visit rivermoonwellness.com or their Amazon store. It's all simple to do. You can check out the Fade to Black blend, the Game Changer blend, or any of their Black Moon Wellness products. It's the only coffee I drink. It is the best, and it's Doc. Again, rivermoonwellness.com. Welcome back, Fade to Black. I am your host, Jimmy Church. Tonight, Dr. Diane Hennacy is with us. We are discussing the telepathy tapes. Diane, when are you able to measure brain activity in a nonverbal autistic child during telepathy? Are there sections of the brain that are more active than, say, my brain?
Well, I mean, it's been a really challenging thing to do because it's really hard for these children to sit still, and and any just little, even facial expressions like this are enough to give you all this muscle artifact that makes it really hard to get the EEGs. So it's really hard to say, but that's work that's ongoing, and I would say that. What I do know about autistic individuals is that they have less of the inhibitory neurons in their brain. And so their brains are operating much faster. It's like they're missing some of the brakes. And so that's something that, I know is going on, and that's also associated with an increase in anomalous phenomena, but and they describe their experience is that they're sped up. I mean, it's very interesting to see the kinds of things that they'll spell out, and they'll just say, you guys are so slow. Just,
Right.
you can't keep up with me. It's just like, but part of what the spelling does for them is it forces them to slow down. To them, it's like if you can think of an analogy where, like, maybe some of your audience have been like speedy, whether it was drug induced or, anxiety induced or whatever, when you're sped up and then you have something that forces you to slow down. That's what the spelling does for them. It's like they're just so sped up that they can't communicate, and and it's just like they have to go from either that to this, which is slower than how they're processing, but that's not how they're processing, but that's the level at which they can get the body to help them express it. And so I hope that helps you to understand.
We can learn so much. Personally, with my job, I need that. I need to get rid of some of those breaks that are happening, because I know they're there. I work on it. I talk about this so much. I'm constantly working on connecting my brain to my mouth. Never say the word in broadcast, right? If you say the word something's not connecting here, right? Right.
Oh, well, you're asking for more time. When you say you're wanting a pause so that you have more time for the signal to come through.
That's right. And I work on it constantly. I almost said the word right there, where I work on substitute words for so people don't hear me say it's a bizarre thing. Now I just said it. See, that's isn't that strange?
Or just switch it to ohm.
Yeah, that's good. That's good.
The primordial sound,
You were there when I was on stage with Dolly and Lidu, and I wrote a question out that only I knew. Okay. And to see this happen in real time, it's another thing on the telepathy tapes, or you see it. But when it's me, standing there and doing this, and the question was, I believe, like, what's the color of the sun? I wanted something just completely arbitrary, right? And that was my question. I knew the question. I'm looking at the question was written out, right? I see. And she tapped out when she hit the Y in real time, right? This is all happening in the now. And she typed out yellow. And what was going through my mind at that moment, I wish I had what Lidu has. I really do. And the question becomes readily apparent, I think, for all of us. Do we all have that gift, but we're just not in the gym exercising those muscles?
Well, when you say you wish you had what she has, what do you mean by that?
Telepathy, or
Yeah.
the ability to, okay, a couple of things could have happened there. All right. All of it's magical. Was her mind reading what was on that card? Is it that? Is her mind reading my mind for the question that was written out? That could be too, all crazy cool, right? But whatever it is, that's amazing. And we see it and we think to ourselves, that'd be really cool if I could do that. You know, do we all have the ability?
I think that we all have a capacity for something like that. But the ability means that you've developed that capacity, right? You know, like, do we all have the ability to play guitar? We might all have the capacity, in that we have the we have the fingers, the hearing, the
Fan of music, understand
yeah,
song.
but to develop the capacity means that you have put the time into it. And you also have to believe in your ability. You have to believe in it to put the time into it, right? If you've convinced yourself that, oh, I couldn't do that,
You'll never do it.
You'll never do it, or you might spend 5 hours trying to do it and go, I can't do it. I knew I couldn't do it. Yeah, but if you believe, no, I think I have that ability, and you realize that you don't start off at that level of skill, but you have the capacity, but you haven't developed the ability. If you realize that and put the time into it, then yeah, that capacity that could eventually become the ability. And when what happens with individuals like Lidu, who have their ability to communicate short-circuited, they find a workaround. They have a strong incentive to develop an alternative ability to do what they would have been able to do through this other means.
Maybe she didn't know the question. Maybe that has nothing to do with it. Maybe she read the answer.
Oh, I suspect.
You know what I mean? In my mind, I want to see yellow, and that's what she tuned into. Right? But equally as cool, by the way.
Yeah, absolutely. But the point is that what you're asking is, you're saying, I want to be able to know what somebody else is thinking, right? When you say you really wish you had that ability.
Or to communicate. Yes.
Yeah. And so what you're wanting is this ability to communicate in a way that's before language, that you don't even need the language. And there's lots of reasons to believe that we all do have that capacity. It's just that it has been so programmed out of us. Our educational system doesn't teach it. We're taught that it's impossible. I mean, there's so many strikes against it.
Too many distractions, too, as well. Too many distractions today. That started with, it didn't start like with the internet. It started in the industrial age. As soon as these things started to happen, the mechanical side of our mind started to take over, and we let go of the consciousness side of things because we were so focused on technology, the wheel, all of these things that came into play, the printing press, and all of it, we just lost sight of it. We just lost sight. And here's the other thing. We're going to stay on the subject, but we're going to take a little bit of a right-hand turn. We all enjoy being part of a group. We all do. We all do it. Whether you're going to a nightclub or you're having friends come over to play Dungeons and Dragons, whatever it is, right? We all want to be part of a group. And then we have the hill. And when that came up, I'm in the dark, man. I'm in my room with my blankie listening to that part of the telepathy tapes. Oh my. And absolutely purely fascinating. But we all want to be a part of a group. And that's what they want, the same things. And they have it. They have the hill. Fascinating. What is the hill for those that don't know what I'm talking about?
Well, so first of all, it's not a physical place. It's a non-physical realm that I believe is a state of consciousness. That if you achieve that state of consciousness, and you could think of that state of consciousness as tuning into a certain frequency. Mm-hmm. You know, tuning into being able to tune into a certain radio station. Okay. Then when you tune into that, the only other individuals who you're going to be interacting with are the ones who are also tuned into that as well. Okay. And it has a certain protection, because the barrier to being there is your state of consciousness. So it's like an exclusive club. And so one of the ways of thinking about it is that there's all these different levels of consciousness, and we all form, we're all in harmony with those that are at the same level of consciousness. And so we're all kind of, and there's a tendency to migrate towards being in the level of consciousness that with others that share that same thing. It's like does that make sense? I mean, to me, it's so obvious, but if I need to express it more in words, I will,
Well, but what you,
but one of the things I notice is that people who are operating out of a similar level of consciousness tend to gravitate towards one another.
Right.
But
you said
it's layered, and so it's layered, and the hill is this really highly evolved state of consciousness, which is a state of consciousness that a lot of these non-speakers are at. That there's a certain almost Buddha-like quality of them.
And you started off by saying the hill is not physical because it's a noun and it describes what we all know as what a hill is, right? A mound of dirt, it's a hill. But to have them call this place where they hang out the hill was brilliant, because we can all relate to that, right? It's a gathering place, and that's where they are going to hang out, to see friends, to communicate.
Yeah. The hill, it's interesting because the hill is an archetype.
Right.
And just like I'm a descendant of the sister of John Winthrop, and John Winthrop talked about the shiny city, and the hill, and as a beacon, to strive towards. It's like you're striving towards the top of, an apex, right? All of these gurus and, in Eastern traditions, the guru's sitting on top of the hill, right? They go up on the mountains. They want to be physically in an elevated place because that's associated with an elevated state of consciousness. And so there's this physical representation of it, but there's also the representation of it in terms.
Symbolic, right?
It's also symbolic, but there's also this sense when you do physically go to the top of the hill, you have a perspective that is transformative.
For them to visit, it's a hangout, right? For
It's
them to visit, are they in a subconscious state? Are they sleeping, or can they do this at any point of the day?
Some of them do it when they're sleeping. Some of them, I mean, Lidu does it while she's walking around.
Right.
And, but she likes to do it at night when everybody's in bed, but she's walking around doing it. So she's not sleeping. So it's one of the things that I find so interesting is that a lot of the individuals who contact me talk about this ability to have what they call split consciousness, and where they can be here and there at the same time. And there's this one individual that I want to do some studies on, who's a speaker, but he's autistic. But he can literally, he has a split screen, okay, and in which in his left hemisphere, his left visual field, which is associated with the right hemisphere of the brain, because there's a crossing, between, the visual field, is, it's what I see off to my right is actually my left hemisphere, my left eye, and vice versa. And he sees in his left hemisphere, which less visual field coming from the right hemisphere, he sees the imaginal space, and he can design things and manipulate them and do all kinds of things with them. Well, on the other side, he's experiencing this reality
at the same time.
And he can it's kind of like Nikola Tesla, in terms of his ability to manipulate, come up with a design and manipulate it and experience it. And so anyway, and he can sometimes have everything be taken over by what is, he experiences it's the imaginal realm, or sometimes it's all, what is more the consensual realm. But he can also experience the split screen thing. And I've had patients and met several of these autists that say that they can have the embodied experience of seeing things through their eyes from this perspective that I'm seeing things, but they can also be simultaneously having the experience as though they're outside of their body and seeing everything from up there as well, 360-degree view. And so consciousness, we most of us experience it as a unitary thing where both eyes are working together to create a binocular view of what reality is. But not all individuals experience it that way. They can have, it's like having more than one TV. Yeah, you ever go to a sports bar where you're watching two sports shows at the same time? That's the reality is more like that.
Fascinating. When did you first become aware of the hill?
About 3 years ago.
What happened? I can only imagine seriously imagine what you thought might be going on. What happened?
Well, I was down in Atlanta. That was when I met John Paul in Houston for the first time, and that's when they told me about the hill and how they would connect with other autistic individuals there, and described it as this very idyllic place where they could connect with all these other non-speakers from all around the world, and it was guarded by angels. And then it was after that I found out that other individuals were also referencing the hill without having heard about the hill from John Paul and Houston. And so what's interesting is, because I've been doing this research for over 15 years, and I hadn't heard of the hill until 3 years ago. But I think it's not that the hill hasn't existed for a long time. I think it's that something has shifted where they're now talking about it. This is one of the things that's also been profound, is that in talking with these autistics, is that they've hidden certain things from telling their parents or other individuals, because it was either too,
it's their private club. That's their own business.
Yeah, maybe it's that it's their private club. It's their hangout.
I'm okay. I'm okay with that.
Yeah, it's like, you're a teenager. You don't tell your parents what you're doing.
No, you don't, man. You got your secret spot with you and your friends.
Yeah. So some of it could be that, but some of it could be that, they're realizing their parents still hasn't fully, grasped, what telepathy is, let alone to hear about the hill, They're just like, don't tell them about this.
Can you imagine, Lidu?
I can't handle it,
Yeah, Lidu goes back to the hill. Man, why'd you have to tell them about our place? Paul getting a bunch of shit when he goes back. This is our private, this is our hang, man. You can't let this stuff out.
Yeah. That's the thing. It's like teenagers, kids like to do that. They like to have their thing that's secret from the parents, so, I don't blame them,
How do they describe it? Is it like, for me, I picture it as a very crowded room with a lot of talking going on. Like you're going into a nightclub or, a meet and greet, and you've got a couple of thousand people in there all having conversations at the same time. That's what happens when you walk into a crowded room. Is it like that? How do they describe it?
Oh, they describe it as really fun, like a party. But they also describe it as a learning place where they teach one another things, or they get downloads of information. So it's a very sacred space for them. But yeah, it's definitely a fun place. It's not a, it's interesting because they will avoid crowded spaces in this physical reality.
For sure.
But they never complain about anything like that in that reality. It's not a problem.
It's such a fascinating subject for me. And the other aspect of it is that I'm wondering in the awareness, and I'm not trying to be cavalier or stupid. I don't want to sound like I'm ignorant, but is Lidu, for example, or any other cases that you've worked with, are they aware of how special they are to us? Are they aware of that, or do they? It's just, you know what I mean? It's not that big of a deal to them.
That's an interesting question. They will write things about, like, not me, because they don't consider me a normie, but they'll say normies will never understand this stuff.
They call us, do they call us normies? I knew it.
They'll put down normies, and they'll literally use that term. They're just like, oh, they'll never, and they're just like, we won't even bother with that. But what they see with me is that I'm able to understand a lot of things about them, and that's part of why they trust me. Yeah.
Well, Lidu, and I watched Lidu. I met her at Contact in the Desert last year, right? And then, of course, we were at the Psy Games together, all of us. And to watch a packed room like that, right? Packed, light up, yell, and show their appreciation. I'm just wondering, does it bother Lidu, or is she cool with it?
Oh, she's cool with it. I mean, but she does have to spend time in her room alone, to decompress from it all,
I can imagine.
But yeah, no, she's remarkable. I mean, she's just such an amazing young girl. Yeah, she just turned 15, and her mother sent me, her sent me some photographs from her celebration of, in Hispanic cultures, turning 15 is a big thing for a girl.
Big deal.
Dressed like a princess with her little tiara, and and it was just so beautiful to see, and she's such a beautiful girl and such a sweet spirit. And I mean, I just, anybody who spends time with her just falls in love with her.
She's just amazing. She's amazing. And I don't want to, how do I say this? It's difficult for a normie to deal with public attention. Okay? It's not easy. It's not, you sign up for the job for sure, but it's difficult. She's got a lot of attention. She walks into a room and everybody is there and smiling and wants it. And I'm just wondering if it's overwhelming, or if she dresses like a rock star. So I guess,
Well, she's really, she's handling it unbelievably well. I mean, when we were at Contact in the Desert and the fire alarm went off,
Yeah.
And then we're evacuating the room, and I thought, oh gosh, is she really going to be able to do this demonstration? And then she still did. I thought, wow, she really is like amazing. Because I know a lot of them would not have been able to do that. So she really is a superstar of superstars. And
so are you. And so I'm gonna talk about you for a second. How are you dealing with and have dealt with critics?
Oh, well, yeah. Okay. I mean, that's a general question, you know
exactly what I'm asking, young lady. How do you deal with it?
Well, a long time ago, I realized I had to overcome. I used to be somebody who was terrified of people not liking me, terrified of criticism. I was such a perfectionist. And I really, I went to the most elite institutions to train and, and whatnot, and worked with the best minds. And and here I was interested in something that I knew was very taboo. And I was like, I have to be able to become public with what I believe. And I really had to work on myself to be able to go out there and say what I believe and take all of the, all of the fallback. The criticism, the slander, the this and the that. And, and it's sad to me that I'll see people even lie about me, even make up shit. Pardon my
Friend. No, go ahead. We're all adults.
I figured, with all your, tattoos and Harley Davidson and guitars, I could say the word shit on your show. But anyway, it was one of those things where I was just like, I can't, this is too important for me to let my petty ego be concerned about that thing that is the criticism. It's I'm that driven to try to help shift the paradigm, and it's not for me. It's for humanity. It's for us to be able to think out of this box that we're in, that it keeps people locked into a paradigm that has us feeling helpless, and the solutions we're offered are not good solutions to today's problems. And I thought, I just thought, what the hell? It's kind of like the same courage it takes to say, I'm going to go skydiving today. I'm just going to, I'm just going to do it. Whatever fears you have, you've got to push them aside, because this is that important. And what I found is that there's a certain freedom that comes from having overcome that. And it doesn't mean that it goes away instantly for, you just do it once and you don't, but over time, you keep doing that. You keep jumping out of the airplane, and eventually you're just like, okay, you trust that it's going to be okay. And you realize that, even if you die in the process, that would have been worse to not engage in something that was that important to you. That,
many academics do just that, though. So many academics do just that.
I couldn't. That just to me, there's something inside of me, inside my soul, that was like, that would have been a death. It's a different death.
What is it about? I'm going to bring up Harvard for a second for an obvious thing. There's you, Avi Loeb right now out of Harvard, right? John Mack out of Harvard. Intellectuals that believed in their research and the data, and decided that it was more, the data and the quest was more important than the pressure from the system. Yeah. What is it about Harvard? You don't hear that necessarily from Stanford or Johns Hopkins, Yale, where it seems to be a lot more conservative and everybody just stays in their lane. What is it about Harvard that it seems, three very, very important subjects, all different, by the way. Avi Loeb, astrophysics; John Mack, abductions; you, telepathy, but you all have one thing in common.
Well, I think what it is that I think that Harvard wants people like us when we are the up and coming stars. Okay, they recognize in us a certain brilliance and creativity, and the things that make for the kind of Harvard wants the kinds of scientists that are going to bring attention to Harvard as being up at the forefront of defining the future, right? MIT's that way in terms of engineering, right? And
for
they're
sure.
Right across the river from one another. I mean, very, very similar kind of cultures in certain ways. And so but the whole point is that they pick people that they see, wow, this person is really on the cutting edge. The thing is that if you are on the cutting edge, and you are able to, and you then stay with that which is the cutting edge, and that matters more to you than conforming, your reputation, all so you're going to have a small percentage of people out of all the people that, so let's say they select people like that. Small percentage of them are going to be the ones that say, screw it. I didn't do this because I wanted to say I'm at Harvard, and I'll do everything I can to say that I'm still at Harvard. You're willing to risk losing being at Harvard because of that thing that attracted them to you and attracted you to them in the first place, because those of us who are doing cutting edge stuff want to be among other people doing cutting edge. You want to be
the only way. I don't think I'm wrong in this. The only way to progress knowledge is to think differently and think outside of the box. If you think the same and stay inside of the box, we ain't going anywhere.
Well, that's exactly right. And so within the arts, that's been more permissible. And so you have these elite institutions that are known for the arts, okay, where they were able to just take it more and more, music, Berkeley School of Music, or wherever you're talking about, where the arts could go beyond that which is, just, what was the current, popular thing. It's like you're taking it to the next edge, and the people who appreciate it the most are the other people that are within that field, because they understand it. Well, within science, something shifted within science in which that became like, no, you're not supposed to do that. The arts can do it, but science can't do it. Well, no, it's arts and sciences. We're both supposed to be
right.
Edge.
It stopped with Isaac Newton, I'm afraid.
We're supposed to both be pushing the edge, right? Mm-hmm. And so what happened is within science that you had places where those of us who got attracted to science and were really good at it just kept sticking to that, and other people, they succumb to the comforts of, well, I want to be chairman of the department, and that's not what's going to get me chairman of the department, or I want to be this, or I want to be that, or whatever, or some people, they become chairman of the department and they think, okay, now I should be able to do whatever I want, and then they get the pushback, like John Mack. He was chairman. He created the Department of Psychiatry at Cambridge Hospital, and then, and they tried to remove him from tenure, because of what he was doing. So there was no protection. So with science, it's like it becomes, and this is where the dogma comes in. It becomes, it's like you are falling. Instead of it being like the arts, where you can just keep pushing the edge, okay? In science, somehow you're like, became more like religion, where it's like you're deviating from the flock. You're deviating from, what we told you is the way it is. And it's like,
isn't tenure supposed to be that security blanket, though? That safety net?
Supposed to be. That's why it was so outrageous what they were doing to John Mack.
Right. I mean, just imagine if Archimedes, Copernicus, Tycho Brahe, Galileo decided to stay in their lane, right? Or Isaac Newton, right? It's fascinating to me that so many today are concerned with a funding environment, reputation, tenure, security, that they don't want to dip their toe in the water. They don't want to go into the deep end of the pool. And that's where the magic happens, Diane.
Oh, totally. I mean, and that's the thing, is that, to me, it's always been clear to me that, I became a scientist because I'm curious. And not because I thought I'd make a lot of money, not because I thought I'd become famous, not because of it. It was because I was curious. And so, so that became like my North Star, was what where my curiosity led me. Not, oh, I want to be this or that. And so what happens is people get seduced into the, the window dressing. Rather than the thing that might have been what attracted to them to it in the first place. And I think that what has to happen is that we need to instill in people curiosity. Our educational system's not doing that right now. Our educational system is, just indoctrinating people into what to believe. And what we need to do is make people inspired to want to learn. I mean, that was one of the gifts that my father gave me, was that and I think I also innately had that, but he certainly didn't beat it out of me, was this desire to understand, to learn, to like, oh my God, what's going on here? Isn't that interesting to see the magic in the everyday, because the everyday is magical.
If I won the lottery tomorrow, you know what I would do? I already know. I'm going back to college for the rest of my life. I'm going back to school. Learning is the best thing ever. I've done 3,000 shows. I've done 3,000 shows with people like you. Why? I'm learning. I do it every single night. I love it. When I went back to school for broadcast and journalism, when I went back to school, I was in my 40s. I was 20 years older than the next oldest person right in my class, right? And first off, I was spending money, right? Okay, that made it more important to me. But I was serious. I was looking at these kids around me. They were all wonderful. They were all cool, but they were kids, and they were like 10% interested in the system, in education, much more wrapped up with friends and going out and this. I get it. I was that age once too, but I appreciate the system. I couldn't wait to be taught. It's just fascinating to me so I would come into class. We got a test or whatever. I'm ready. You know what? I never, in everything that I did, I never got a question wrong. Not once. On anything. Any project, anything, I gave it 150% all the time. But I would have these kids come up, okay, Church, can I see your notes from last week? Right? Can I see? I'm like, man, no, take your own notes, man. I'm here, and they, and I could see it. And here's the other thing. All right. They're there on daddy's dime. Do you follow you see where I'm going with that? They don't have anything about me. I'm spending my own dimes. I'm going to squeeze everything out of it. So that's what I would do. I would go back to college for the rest of my life. That's what I would do.
Mm-hmm. Absolutely. I mean, I saw the same thing in, my psychotherapy practice, that the people who were super wealthy, for whom like paying me, what my fee was didn't mean anything. It was just like pocket change to them. And then the people who were like on, insurance that paid for everything. And so they didn't have to pay anything. Those two extremes were the ones who worked the least in therapy.
Yeah. One of the students showed me a picture of their parents' house in Montana.
It
was like 3 blocks wide. Right.
So when there's no skin in the game,
right,
then yeah, it's sort of it's treated differently. And so what I found was that the people who were like middle class, who, it was just like, well, I really need, I need help, and, I'm willing to, my insurance doesn't cover this very well, but I'm willing to, here's my money, and they felt it, it was like, those were the ones who got the most out of the therapy with me. And it wasn't because they were necessarily brighter. It was because they had more skin in the game. And I think that there's a lot to be said for that, that when you went to school, you had more skin in the game. You had more reason to be there. And for some people, they need some experience out after high school, just so that when they go to college, they value college, and it's not just something they're doing so that they're continuing the dependence upon the system, whether it's their parents or scholarships or whatever it is that they're just delaying adulthood versus right. They're there because, right? Isn't that what
delaying responsibility? Yeah.
Versus that you're there because you figured out what you want to learn something about, and you realize this is somebody who could teach me a few things.
I wanted to ask you before we run out of time. I know it's not necessarily in your wheelhouse, but I know you've got an opinion. Right now, we're going to find, well, I guess I'm going to find out the hard way, right? You see, you got to take chances. What were we just talking about? Got to take chances. Right now, we've got this object, 3I Atlas, coming around from the sun. Avi Loeb has made some pretty controversial opinions on it based on data. But the world it's got the world's attention right now. And I've watched a few of the mainstream media networks out there comment on it. What do you think it is? And if it is something artificial, can the world handle it?
Yeah, well, I mean, so I have, a couple of different opinions about it, because I don't have any inside scoop on it. But so one possibility is that it is, because it's definitely different from anything that we've heard about before. Okay, there's just no question about it. It's moving towards our solar system along the ecliptic. Okay, which is like 1 in 500 chance that it's, moving along that ecliptic, the same plane that of the planets rotating around the sun, it's moving right at that same plane. Okay. That's pretty unusual. Then it's glowing an unusual color, and its composition is different. Right. So, that's different, and it's massive, and it's not, it's just not acting like your typical comet. Okay. So, and so the question is, is it that we've had things like this coming through before, and it's just that we didn't have the technology to observe them? Is it that we're just much, because we've got all kinds of, we've even got probes around Mars now that are taking pictures of this thing, so it's just like, we didn't have that, 20 years ago or whatever. So is it just that this is something that's happened before, and we now just have the technology to observe it? Or is it something else? And I'm willing to entertain either possibility, and this something else is this idea that, there is higher intelligence out there, that there are other advanced civilizations, and that we've gotten their attention, and they're making a beeline, quite literally, along the ecliptic, making a beeline for us, and for whatever reason, is it that they're making a beeline because they see us at risk for nuclear war and they have, the technology to stop that, or is it some kind of almost like humanitarian mission, or is it what is it? You could speculate a lot. I don't have the answers, but I think that it's one of those two things. And it's going to be quite interesting to see what it turns out to be, and we're going to know pretty soon here.
Yeah, we're going to know pretty soon. What is it? Is it like old episodes of I Love Lucy that attracted their attention? You know what I mean? Whatever we were beaming out, and they just want to come by and see if that is what is going on this planet. Is it that, that we have emitted enough technology out there at the speed of light over the last 150 years? If you go back to Marconi and Tesla, right? So 150 years we've been broadcasting out. So that means 75 light years away, and then 75 years of traveling to here, whatever that may be. Is it something like that where we lit up, the Milky Way enough as a planet that we attracted the attention of something? And I would say there's a very high probability of that. I think that there's a lot of life out there, and they are definitely aware. This planet glows. It's a beautiful blue gem full of life. And we're looking for the same things, aren't we? We're looking for exoplanets every single day. And we're looking for those techno signatures. So I think in advanced civilization, many of them have been aware of us for a very long time. I'm okay with that. I just hope the rest of the world doesn't overreact.
Well, yeah, I mean, I don't think it's I Love Lucy that attracted them. I think that
Gilligan's Island was pretty good.
I think that it could be what we started doing during World War II.
Sure.
The first nuclear testing and whatnot, and all that we're doing that is really violating the laws of nature, playing God, and it may be that what we're doing in those realms has more implications than just for our planet, but it has implications beyond our planet in terms of the impact, and that the other civilizations are interested in that and putting kibosh to it. So I think that's quite possible. If that's what this is. Is
the planet able to handle it?
Oh, hell yeah. I'm not worried about this at all. I'm more worried about the way it could get spun, in the media to instill panic and hysteria in people. I think that's more problematic, is the way that people try to spin things to their own agenda.
Mm-hmm.
But I think what's really critical is I think that if this is happening, that this is an advanced civilization heading here, I think it's benevolent in form. I think that it's really to prevent us from destroying ourselves.
Before I let you go, Diane, we're going to be hanging out at the Conscious Life Expo coming up in February. You're going to be speaking, and you're also going to do a workshop. What are you going to teach? What are you going to talk about?
Well, I have a theory that I'm really, really excited about for understanding, consciousness, and understanding, these, like, think of it this way. Think of it as our brain has two different modes of operation, okay? And we can toggle between the two of them. And it's about understanding these two different forces that are how consciousness can operate, okay? So in one of them, it's a consciousness that is linear in its thinking, and it leads to sort of entropy and decay, okay? And then the other mode of consciousness can actually intuition and life supporting and synchronicity supporting, modalities, and really understanding, those two different modalities, just like our computer will have like Windows and iOS, that these two different operating systems that are different, and you can have them both running on the same computer. But how do you take those two and harmonize them? And I think what's happening right now is that we've had these two parallel different systems that we experience, one when we're dreaming and one when we're awake. And what's happening is now, what's happening is that more and more people are experiencing like a merging of the two in a way in which you can actually experience both informing one another, working together with one another, and that's actually what's going to enable us to be, our highest potential is for us to actually have both the analytical and the intuitive, these two different forces of consciousness operating. I think that we're seeing people that are having awakening experiences, and what's creating that awakening is that these two forces are shifting their relationship to one another, because we've been living in an age in which things have been so dominated by this one way of thinking and perceiving that this other way is coming in. And it's like, how do you integrate the two of them and bring them together to work together into a harmonious whole? And so it's a matter of taking, this knowledge that I've come to from just studying it as a scientist with what there's my chimes going off with what the ancient wisdom traditions were telling us, because this is ancient wisdom with modern science backing it up. And how do we apply that, because that's what's needed right now.
And the analog old technology of the grandfather clock. Just let us know. We are at the end of the show. Diane, thank you so much. I look forward to hanging out with you in a couple of months right down here in Los Angeles. And it's going to be great to see you. Thank you so much. Great conversation tonight.
Thank you. Bye.
See you soon. Dr. Diane Hennacy, her website and the links are below, drdianehennacy.com. That's DR, not doctor. Links are below. All right. Now, I want to remind everybody really quick before I get out of here. Tomorrow night, Tex Wesson is with us, first-time guest, and we're going to be talking about Dogman and Bigfoot and much more tomorrow night on Fade to Black. So I'll see everybody tomorrow, but you know the drill. All I've got for now is go Beckley Teppy. Fade to Black is produced by Hilton J. Palm, Renee Newman, and Michelle Freed. Special thanks to Bill, John, Dex, Jessica, Dennis, and Kevin. Webmaster is Drew the Geek. Music by Doug Aldrich. Intro, Space Boy. Fade to Black is produced by KJCR for the Game Changer Network. This broadcast is owned and copyrighted 2024 by Fade to Black and the Game Changer Network, Inc. It cannot be rebroadcast, downloaded, copied, or used anywhere in the known universe without written permission from Fade to Black or the Game Changer Network. I'm your host, Jimmy Church.
Go Backley Tappy.